Only Jews can make this world shut down. Only Jews. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my next live stream. I'm going to speak about just points kind of at random, as usual, and rehashing things, looking at them in another angle, at another angle, is always useful. I mean, we've wasted many thousands of hours of our lives, if you like me, watching television and listening to the same Globo Homo message since, ever television was invented, just about, it seems, when you start to go back into the history. So why not just keep rehashing and unpacking and reassembling our own viewpoints, non-stop, just like the television does. So currently, we're not out of this lockdown yet, which by now the people who are awake are just increasingly under more stress, and the people who are asleep are ever so ever, and it's just getting worse and worse, this divide between actually being awake and actually being asleep. And the levels that they're going to now. I mean, if you're awake, it kind of reminds me of Batman, where the Joker is, he actually loves interacting with Batman. He loves challenging him. He loves it. It's what keeps him alive. So Batman's like, he's going to ignore him because he's going to look like the bad guy if he responds and with full force. And he's always trying to be measured and actually doesn't want to interact with the Joker. And that's kind of what our cabal is to me and to people who are awake, because we're in direct dialogue with them. We awaken and they clamp down exactly proportional to our awakening and our vocalness with regards to that awakening. Certain trigger words that they use and that trigger them exponentially is the isms, racism, anti-Semitisms, sexisms. The isms are actually what we need to be doing. If anybody is even wants to have a serious country, their number one rule has to basically be broken. It's that simple. They've called it racism. That's in my opinion, is their number one crime, I would say. Homophobia about second, and anti-Semitism probably about third in ranking of how they actually clamp down on these things, in my opinion. I mean, anti-Semitism is, I don't really know what that normally means. You anti the globalist, multi-culti, global homo agenda is pretty much. It doesn't mean that you're racially opposed to certain people as such, like in actual terms, because you could be completely benevolent towards all people and merely want to protect your own people, and that will actually incur this wrath. And it's because it's the very things that we must be doing, or the very things which are forbidden. It's so funny. But this is the world we live in. And as I say, we are Batman. The people who are awake, you are Batman if you're awake, unless you're sitting there spitting tax at everything that I've ever said. We're in dialogue with the Joker, who evidently made it abundantly clear. Immediately after protests, Boris Johnson's on the TV that night, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, to announce lockdowns. Sorry, that's the new strain of COVID. You know, anyway, the levels of in your face responses, which no doubt are also linked. What we're undergoing now is linked to the awakening, which started in 2016 in any sort of meaningful way, whereby they couldn't ignore it, with the Trump election in America and with Brexit, which who cares about Brexit now? We're under such tyranny now, it like makes Brexit seem like, fuck it, can we go back to Brexit oppression rather? I mean, it's insane that people have not clicked and are not in tune with the dialogue that is actually going on. And I don't appreciate those people. I don't think, oh, shame, they know not what they do. Because while we all facing this absolute abject terror, they're sitting in a little comfy zone, not fighting at all. And it's not acceptable. The boomer generation is just absolute masters at that. They are the apple of the eye of the Bolsheviks. That generation. That is their... I don't think they made enough Hollywood movies about their little sexcapade in Woodstock and their anti-establishment. They said it was anti-Vietnam. No, it was anti-family, anti their parent families. They that was what that war was about. And that was a psychological war. If you consider how stars were made, not their talent that rocketed them to the top. When you can see, the links quite blatantly, Lady Gaga, mother is mental health, head of mental health for the World Health Organization. I think she needs to start with her own daughter, because that thing is cooked in the head. Although that's also an act. They want to make society insane. They also know what they are doing. They're probably a lot more balanced and logical than what we think. And I don't see them as victims at all. Not at all. As a Christian, we believe that, well, yes, we all sinners and we all have to be believers to be absolved of our sin, believers in Christ, and repent of your sins, which is standard. But this idea that we all sinners and putting us in the same basket as that, the Lady Gagas and the people who are willfully Christ haters, I think there's a massive difference. I think there should be prison terms and death sentences for certain crimes. There's not an overall forgiveness for all things. You have to pay for your actual crimes. Also, how people are not awake to the possibility that we are the true Israelites, as in seeing who is being attacked and maligned in their own countries, cannot have their own countries, forbidden from having their own countries. And who is the most persecuted? It's quite plain that the Israelites are the ethnic Europeans. Aside from the fact that many of them have completely fallen away and have become stooges for the porno empires of the Jews and the cabal, not just the Jews in general. It's a complex thing, but I don't think it's as complex as some people think. Who the Israelites are, I feel, is, I never would have cared about this. But Christians who say, it doesn't matter, all that matters is the salvation, and it's not a salvation issue. But if you are fighting for truth and you're ignoring where the battle is at, you're worthless in this whole kingdom. You have to double down on those things. And I mean that because some people have said things and then they've gotten called out on it. And then they shy away from it and go into any other kind of Christian activism except that very thing which we need to actually be fighting on. You know, the Global Homo agenda was one of them. They just let that fly. Now it's the identifying the synagogue of Satan. There's only like a handful of them, and then they all hide away afterwards. You need to learn from even the past. I mean, Alexander Solzhenitsyn survived the gulags. 60 million other Russians who confessed to their sins and so on didn't. Richard Vermorant in Romania, the same thing. He's actually a Jew, became a Christian. But they doubled down on their dissidence. You cannot say something and run away, because then you become prey. You know, if you watch, it's a law of nature. If you watch even a buffalo turns on a lion, it's a lot harder than when that buffalo is on the run, because that killer instinct is encouraged of the lion, and also the attack point is from behind. But if you turn and fight and double down, even though you are supposedly breaking all of their commandments in their face, it's open defiance is what is needed. Batman needs to actually flatten the Joker instead of this kind of ignore and take it and take it and take it until eventually he's caused so much destruction. It's like, what is the point of Batman? What was the point of Batman ever? No, he never clamped down. I mean, there's the Joker in America, the American Joker, George Soros. I mean, we have our own one, Oppenheimer, in South Africa, or whoever. But in America, it's George Soros and his cohorts and his sub-lieutenants funding these riots. And if it wasn't Antifa, then they suddenly morphed into ELM and made exclusion zones. This is like in your face lawlessness, which is allowed. Rules for thee, but not for me. They're goading everybody. They're showing everybody, look at what we can do. But if you come out with any kind of protest whatsoever, the maximal force of the law is used against you. And in no better example of that is in the UK, where I attended protests and we resisted the police, at least at one that I attended. They then cowardly sort of waited for their chance when everybody was relaxed and the guard was down, and I thought a lot of us men had settled back into the crowd. They then make all their arrests, and then they use this modus operandi nonstop. So the optics horrify everybody. They're scared of the police now. They're scared to make opposition because they see the way they arrest people. You know, it's obscene. Drug lords are not even arrested like that. Carried horizontally, you know, by 15 officers and another 10 surrounding them, fending off anybody who wants to free them, or is objecting to the manner in which they are arrested. You know, it's total cowardice as well. The optics are what they want. They want people to see that and go, oh my gosh. I mean, we are living in North Korea and China, and this thing is not even remotely acceptable. How are people not all awake? But I treat those people as, you know, they are enemy, basically. The people complying to this are traitors, and they may as well be ruled by Beijing, because that's essentially what will happen. Because I think there's hints that Beijing has thousands of people well embedded in this country, in the UK and everywhere else in the world. You can bet your bottom dollar. Communist card carrying Chinese. But here's the but. Don't think of that as being like a new cabal. They are still controlled by the cabal. It's just another puppet of theirs, and they've just decided to move the power. They've basically given that beast their power. It's like they just changed the beast. One beast is is not working out for them, so they've created another one. It's the same cabal. It's the Schiffs, the Oppenheimers, the Warburgs, the Rockefellers, and the Rothschilds. And who knows who is truly the king of the castle? Who knows? Because it seems to me that historically, Rothschild was given funding from Schiff in the very, very, very beginning. But there were always these money lenders around. It seems like no matter how far you dig back, there was some king who had these tax collectors, and guess who they was? Guess who they was? This also the statements in the Bible that Satan is the god of the air. And when you look at now how things that are transmitted via the air, as such, the media. And it's just, if you listen to the media, every single word that they ever utter is an inversion of the Ten Commandments. Every single word. When we are marriages for one man and one woman, they are marriages, for gays and lesbians. Where we are supposed to be separate as the Israelites and not covet others. They covet everything of the Israelites. And in fact, take their land, take their woman. It's your right. This has been encouraged in the media. It just needs to be simplified into simplified words. People get far too technical and they get buried in the intellectualism of college, of their Marxist universities. We need to wake up to these points, the Christians too. It's important. If it's bullshit, then it must be called out as lies and proved historically and scripturally. There's definitely, to me, it makes a lot of sense as to who the Israelites are and who's the most persecuted right now. And why? Well, of course, because it says in the Bible that Satan's seed is going to war with God's seed. And the complications of all of that is irrelevant about some of them. I mean, some of our own people are warring against us. And that's actually the key to the whole thing. Also, we need to look at stolen terminologies. Something that is a favorite of the left is coining terminologies which should have been coined by our own selves. And our lazy non-fight for the last decades has just allowed them to dominate. And one of them is the inversion of enlightenment. All of these people running around thinking that enlightenment is when you sit and meditate in the Buddhist position and actually empty your mind. It's just like, that's enlightenment, is emptying your mind. No, that's not. It's relaxation. Enlightenment is knowledge, adding to your knowledge. Why was I frustrated and didn't know what was going on 10 years ago? Because I wasn't enlightened. And I've become increasingly enlightened with knowledge, not with facts, with historical facts. Our history has been completely subverted as we've learned it. You need to go back to basics. Look at the Crusades. Oh, they demonized monsters, but if not for them, you would all be, if not for the pogroms in Spain and in Portugal, they would just be Tel Aviv by the sea or whatever, on a large scale. Certain wars were what had to be fought. And we've been taught now for so many decades that it's not our right, we must not kill, we must not. And they use those things against us. The law that we believe in, they use against us. And we're too stupid to know how to interpret it for our own good. About this lockdown as well, I mean, if you cannot see the racial element of this lockdown as well. In South Africa, the blatant clampdown on white beaches, whereas absolute hordes on the Natal beaches are allowed. But where did they lock down? The Garden Route, the most uncrowded beaches in the country. Globally, this thing has been done in such a way. Egypt is not doing all of these insane social distancing restrictions. No, where's it been done? Western countries. Because why? Because that's who they want to control. They want to control you, Israelites, or however you would call yourself. That is who they want. They're not interested in third world nations. They covet the fine features or whatever it is that they covet about us, but they just hate us as well. And you have to get a grip with this. And the more we awaken, the more they're going to clamp down. Because the Joker, he actually wants us to just go absolutely mental. And unfortunately, we're not fighting back. And thinking that it's because what they want us to do is a mistake. The worst thing we can do for ourselves is to just comply. Continual compliance and allowance of what's going on. And not recognizing who the true enemy are, the EFF. Oh, really? What are they doing with these high-level funders coming from Rothschild bag men, Lord Renwick's in London, or Rupert-type characters in South Africa who live in Swaziland, multi-millionaires. Jack Markovitz. Who is he? What is his family lineage? Is he? I mean, it's astonishing. It's in your face. What Brezhnev said was very true, that once a population gets past a certain point of indoctrination, even if they come with full media disclosure, people will not wake up. They will not fight them. And boy, oh boy, is that ever true. Also, further to the stealing of the language. And another terror technique deception technique is pseudonyms and euphemisms, otherwise known as pseudonyms and euphemisms. Globalist. Oh, it sounds so, sustainable development. This basically means that it's the exact opposite. It's unsustainable. It means middle class, lower class businesses are going to be fucked. I mean, because you're not sustainable. And it'll be championed by spoiled little college girls in their 20s. Sustainable development. Where it's more sustainable to mow down massive fields for vegetables, but having cattle grazing in a natural grassland, no, that's not sustainable, because you're eating meat, you see. And who likes to eat meat? Right-wing fanatics, of course. God forbid Hitler comes along and disproves them. Sorry, Austrian painter. Pseudonyms and euphemisms. A pseudonym would be Ghislaine Maxwell, not her surname. Trotsky. His name was actually Lev Bronstein. People are just in your face, and they just ignore it. And they don't bring up the topics in their own sphere of influence. They've accepted becoming the corporate subjects of Pick and Pay and Checkers and Sainsbury's if you're in the UK, or not Sainsbury's, Tesco's, or Asda, where you have to comply to their rules when you are shopping. You're the valued golden customer. And this is probably because the cabal know that the Goyim are bankrupt on paper and also morally. But they must have calculated so they can go ahead and do this. We can boycott as much as we like. It's not going to work. They have too much funding. Their pockets are just, they're unfathomable how deep their pockets are. So if we all stopped shopping and never went there for the next 6 months, they would still survive. It's irrelevant. They're getting our taxes anyway, the cabal. So these giant corporate mergers that took place were always for the same purposes. I mean, look at the airlines. Even Swiss Air was attacked. I think all they had to do to get the airlines is to bump up prices to a point and knock down their prices to a point where they're actually running at a loss. But they have unfathomably deep pockets. So the private airlines could never keep up. Even Swiss Air. Imagine the Swiss going bankrupt. No, that's because it was an impossibly rigged situation. And they're using your money, your energy. Money's an invented concept. They even made sure we went off the gold standard. They want it to be an invented concept because it's their concept. And then it's their control. So they collapse airlines and then they merge them. But who controls it ultimately? And it's the cabal every time, So now your international flights, you are now subject to their rules. National carriers like Qantas Airlines and all saying, well, they're going to enforce this health passport and all this crap. It's all diabolical, and there's not an easy way to fight this if you're going to not use violence, of course. The fact is you're going to have to wait it out, possibly, and never travel, and hope that in 5 years' time they start to actually collapse and we start to actually take back. I mean, it could be done a hell of a lot quicker. And the first starting point would be everybody take their fucking masks off. It's such a simple thing. It's not like we're asking you to go over the top in World War I, and die for your brothers, or go and carry your wounded brother in World War I out of the bomb crater to the medics. No, none of that type of insane heroism is necessary. It's just take your fucking mask off. But no, that's too much for everybody. I mean, I've fought these people it's very stressful because I'm also on my own when I do it. There's not a single person that ever stands up and agrees or whatever. Not that I've had very many confrontations either. Out of 100, I've had 2. So and it wasn't like they mowed me down with a howitzer. You have to get on board. The rifts are deepening. And it's not going to change. We who can see the truth are never going to change it. So if you would like to not have a war further down, you need to stop complying with this mask wearing. Yeah. Another concept that the WASPs and the Catholics and the Christian world has is the sacrifice and bootstrap ideology. You must sacrifice to get what you want and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's like there must always be a cost. And then you got the other alternative of that, which is your trillionaire, billionaire ideology, which is make others make the sacrifice. You want something done, make them make the sacrifice. See if you can work that one out. This cabal doesn't sacrifice bulls anymore. They sacrifice you. Whether it's in Afghanistan or World War One or World War Two, and they sacrifice you. You are the blood offering of the cabal. In the Christmas truth of 1914, that should have been the end of that cabal. Soldiers came out of the trenches and they discovered that, man, these were not enemies. These are people just like us. They shared a common thing of Christmas and shared their national drink, which was champagne for the French, schnapps for the Germans, etc., etc. Whiskey for the Scots. Right there and then, why did they go back into those trenches and fight each other again? That should have been the turning point for all of us. But you're too stupid. And he's proving it again by all wearing the mask. At some point, you're going to either be deeply in regret or in hell in terms of just your general life. Because the type of prison sentence that they're giving us, we're under house arrest. There's virtually no freedom. And don't think that just going for a jog is enough to compensate for, and say, oh, but you can still go outside. But you can, no. All of these things, it's bullshit. They don't have the rights to restrict one single iota of your freedoms. I mean, I got no time for people anymore because of this. They got no time for me too. Don't worry. They've quarantined me socially on social media anyway. I'm going to keep going on about the same points until at least I win over one more or two more. It doesn't matter. Actually, the numbers don't even matter anymore. Also, watching these protests, we had 30,000 people. With the right organization, by now, I believe a hell of a lot more could have been achieved with that number of very motivated, dedicated people against the lockdown and so on. And still the questions remain. Where's the mass Christian protest? Where is that? I mean, the mark of the beast, I think they're sending us a message, at the very least, if it's not the real mark of the beast. I mean, what more message could you possibly want where they patent it with 3 6s in the number? They call one of the ingredients luciferase. I'm serious. They're fucking, are you kidding me? We're in dialogue. They're so cocksure of their power as well that they feel they can absolutely troll us. They know that all men and women will be dependent on this eventually because they control the global exchange, the shops, the way money is exchanged. I'm not really sure what on earth they are trying to do, because at the same time, if this is the end times, I don't see God unleashing pestilence on the earth. Because if this thing was unleashed by God, we wouldn't be debating about whether it's a real pandemic or not. I mean, these people have essentially crushed the Christians, and they've done very, very little in retaliation. I fear for the future, not because of how wicked the cabal is, but because the people who should be fighting are not fighting. I'll end on that note. And see you again.